Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The first passage is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25. Jesus tells the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 of them wise and 5 foolish. They await their bridegroom, the Christ consciousness. The wise virgins keep the oil in their lamps, symbolic of their devotion lit through the night. The foolish virgins place no oil in their lamps. These foolish ones are like the average devotee, going through the motions of outer ritual, but keeping no fire of love burning in the heart. When the bridegroom's coming is announced, the foolish virgins realize their mistake and hasten out to purchase oil. During their absence, the Christ consciousness comes and embraces those who have been awaiting him with devotion. The foolish ones, by their lackluster devotion, are not accepted by him. Watch, therefore, Jesus told his listeners, for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda describes the foolish virgin consciousness he encountered in the Mahamandal hermitage he stayed in as a young man in Benares. I was pleased, he wrote, that my new home possessed an attic where I managed to spend the dawn and morning hours. The ashram members, knowing little of meditation practices, thought I should employ my whole time in organizational duties. They gave me praise for my afternoon work in the office. Don't try to catch God so soon. This ridicule accompanied one of my early departures toward the attic. Later, during meditation, I felt lifted as though bodily to a sphere uncircumscribed. The Master cometh today. A divine, womanly voice came from everywhere and nowhere. This supernal experience was pierced by a shout from a definite locale. A young priest, nicknamed Habu, was calling me from the downstairs kitchen. Mukunda, enough of meditation. You are needed for an errand. The Divine Mother's words were not spoken for the benefit of that priest, the foolish virgin, but for Mukunda, the wise virgin. For this was the day his guru, Sri Yukteswar, came to him. Grieve not, friends, if you feel that you have been foolish. No error is forever. Someday, if you keep your lamp lit now, your opportunity will come. In the Bhagavad Gita, the 6th chapter, Krishna promises every devotee, Arjuna, none who works for self-redemption will ever meet an evil destiny. Spiritual failure, though a deep disappointment, is always temporary. Eternal hellfire is but a projection of vindictiveness in the human mind. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Thank you. I'd like to start my talk today with the reading from Whispers from Eternity, Yogananda's book of prayer demands. This is number 116, Prayer Demand for Devotion. O Father, I hold my heart in my folded hands. Teach me to saturate my prayers with thy love. Give me the simple, sincere devotion of a child toward thee. Teach me to realize thy nearness behind the voice of my prayer. Teach me to realize thy breath in my own breathing. Teach me to feel thee in my emotion. Teach me to know that thy wisdom is in my understanding. Teach me to feel thine all-pervading life in my life. O flood my senses with thy light. So the reading today is an interesting one, isn't it? It's we have Jesus' stern warning, and then we have the hope from Krishna, saying there is no spiritual failure. Meanwhile, I remember when I first heard this passage, um, I thought, oh, I'm sure I'd be one of those five that I was procrastinating, or you know, I wasn't really on top of it, and but the words of hope are we don't fail, and there are no wise or foolish virgins, because they're all devotees, and um, we have our ups and downs, our good days, our bad days. We fall, we pick ourselves up. It's part of life, unless we, it's all part of the plan. And also, the plan is to not kick ourselves and get down on ourselves, because I think we all know it does more damage than good. Um, but there are so many interesting. I just out of curiosity Googled spiritual failure on the internet, and it's really interesting. A lot of interesting things came up. First of all, we know we have the examples in our lives on our path here of Swami, our beloved Swamiji, and all the tests that he went through, and he he was always he kept it all in his heart. It was all a gift from Divine Mother. It was all, in fact, he said our karma is Divine Mother, and we shouldn't push it away because it's a gift, because we have to go through it. And then even Master, I mean, in this passage, of course, we know after reading the autobiography of the yogi, that he wasn't satisfied with the world, and he was always searching, and he had, here he was a realized master. He came in that way. He came in as a liberated master, and yet he still had to go through these tests to show us um, how to deal with them. And I mean, even when he came to America, he had many, many tests in Los Angeles, and false accusations, and even lawsuits. Um, and we have the Pandava brothers. In the Bhagavad Gita, the five brothers who were so noble and have all the great qualities, and yet they got banished from the kingdom. And Rama and Sita and his brother Lakshman, same thing. They were dharmic, they were doing the right thing, but they got banished. So we just have to remember that all these falls or fails are part of the process. And so this is what the internet said. Now, Oprah was the daughter of a teenage mother. She was pregnant at 14. Her son died at birth. And one of her first jobs in TV ended abruptly after the producer declared that she was unfit for television. Well, I mean, Oprah is so popular. Oprah, she might have been able to run for president. I don't know. And then J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter books, I think we know the story of her. She was a single mother. She was on, on food stamps, or whatever the equivalent is in England. And she was writing the books in a little cafe. And now she's maybe one of the richest people in the world. I don't know. Not that money is, the answer to spiritual failure or success, but it is interesting to watch how much someone could be struggling, and then to have things be turn the page so much. Stephen King. Now, I don't really like horror novels, but he's very popular, and again, huge bestseller. And one of his most successful books, Carrie, which I think was made into a movie too, it was rejected by 30 publishers, and one of whom told him that negative utopias do not sell well. And so he gave up, and he threw the manuscript in the trash. And luckily, his wife retrieved it and urged him to have another go. So Colonel Sanders, again, I have these examples that maybe aren't, I wouldn't necessarily resonate with them. But I mean, I don't like Colonel Sanders' Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I don't read horror stories. But he was age 62, and he had $105 in his pocket, and he was pitching his chicken recipe to restaurants. Over 1,000 restaurants rejected him. Walt Disney. This is one of my favorites. He was fired from the Kansas City newspaper because his editor felt that he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. That's just amazing, isn't it? And Einstein. I can't list all of his failures, but I'm sure he was not mainstream. He was not really very accepted. But what he said was, failure is success in progress. So in other words, in order to have success, you have to have failure. So the other thing that the mainstream media, which I thought was very interesting and very true, and I was glad to see that I came across websites, 15 ways to avoid failure, or 15 or 10 ways to take care of this or that. And so some of the things that said, failure is a sign that you are challenging yourself to do something that's difficult. And another one is, failure can be a great teacher if you are willing to learn. So the point is, we have to keep our eyes forward, not focus on our failures, keep our energy moving forward and our heart focused on the positive things, and don't ignore them. Don't ignore our failures. Don't dwell on them. Don't identify them. And think of it as a learning tool. So I heard this story recently. There are 3 yogis, and they were on a mountainside, and they were in very deep meditation, and hours and days pass, and they're in silent meditation, and finally something happens. A bird circles overhead and swoops down and flies over them on their mountain ledge. And then it sails off into the distance. So hours pass, days pass, meditation, silence, and then one of the yogis speaks. A hawk. And they all meditate, more hours, more days, deep silence. And then finally another yogi speaks. No, eagle. Complete silence, meditation for hours, for days. Very, very deep silence. And finally, the third yogi says, if you two keep fighting, I'm out of here. So it's kind of a matter of perspective, that was a cute story. So a devotee once asked Swami Kriyananda, they said, I feel insincere when I sing the chant, I want only thee. That chant, I want only thee, Lord. Because I know that there are many things that I want besides God. I don't, yes, I want God, but I want this or that. And I thought that's an interesting acknowledgement, And Swamiji replied, try inwardly chanting, I want to want only thee. Then at least you're sincere, is what he said. So I thought that was cute too. So we're kind of divided. We know that our happiness lies within. We have so many tools to help us find that. And yet there's still a part of us that seeks fulfillment in the world. And a big part of us. I mean, we're living in this world. I mean, most of the time, that's what we're thinking about. We're not thinking about God, and because we have our daily lives. And unless you are really one of those yogis up on the mountain ledge, meditating for days and hours, but even then you get distracted about a hawk or an eagle. So don't, don't identify with your lower tendencies, because that's just part of who we are. And um, the idea is to just to let go, rise above them, uh, leave them behind us, and move forward, and define yourself by your aspirations rather than by your present state where we are now, and hold firmly to the thought, I may have stumbled along the way, but my intentions are sincere. I have an affirmation on the dashboard of my car. It's always interesting. I try to make little altars wherever I am, every wall or every corner, statues or pictures or sayings or something. And so I arrived back in California about a month ago, and I'd forgotten what my California car had in it, and it is one of my favorite affirmations. I leave behind me both my failures and accomplishments. What I do today will create a new and better future filled with inner joy. I leave behind me all my failures and accomplishments. What I do today will create a new and better future filled with inner joy. So how do we find that joy? And in the reading, we have the oil, and the oil is in the lamp, and the oil is the devotion. And that is what was running low for half of these souls who were waiting for the Christ consciousness to arrive. Because, of course, I think we all recognize, and Swami tries to show it to us in these readings, that the symbolism of the Bible is not necessarily literal. So, it's not that they were waiting for Christ to come take them into the marriage bedroom. It was the Christ consciousness. And so devotion. And we, I think we know many of the tools that, chanting, of course, and watching inspiring videos, listening to talks, and listening to wonderful music. But our devotion is, in the reading, it says lackluster. So we don't want it to be lackluster. We don't want it to be wishy-washy. We need to be on fire for God, and we need to keep that flame burning, the lamp lit within us. And as it says in the festival, these words, "O Lord, with all my heart, with all my mind, with all my soul, and with all my strength, I choose thy love. I choose only thee." So we have so many inspiring messages, and we can personalize them. What resonates, what really feels like it shifts things inside for us and helps us to remain steadfast and true and not get too distracted. I think I don't really need to tell you all the different things, because I've mentioned chanting and visualization, affirmation, and meditation, of course, and reading, being in the company of conscious people, and that is very appropriate, as many of us were on the Zoom call last night with my beloved cousin Om Prakash and Prem Shanti, shining lights. And they shared with us the story of how they started Ananda, Rhode Island. And again, it's about, coming together and trying to be a channel of that light to inspire others and to be inspired by others. And when we can come together in community, which right now obviously we're all a little hobbled by that because of the pandemic, but there will come a time, and I'm this of course is very dear to my heart. I'm so excited about the possibility of finding some houses or land not too far from the center, so we all can participate in this experiment, this great experiment of living for God. Um, and when you're in community, you know, this uh, it's dear to my heart, has been since I first came to Ananda 42 years ago. But having spent 8 months not in community when I was living in Boston and New Hampshire, and I was with loving friends and family, so it's not a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, there's just nothing like it. And you to have your best friends, to wake up and meditate with them, and to chant and play, and to go plant in the garden, and to harvest, and to have work days, and to have retreats, and come together and fun and joy and in work and in service and in our spiritual practices. All of that just makes such a rich life that there's no comparison. So I want to end with this other quote from the Bhagavad Gita, another one of hope, great hope. And here Krishna is telling Arjuna to clasp me with heart and mind, so shalt thou dwell surely with me on high. But if thy thought droops from such height, despair not. Give me lower service. Seek to reach me, worshipping with steadfast will. And if thou canst not worship me steadfastly, work for me. Toil in works pleasing to me. And for he that laboureth right for love of me shall finally attain. But if in this thy faint heart fails, bring me thy failure. That's the line that I just love. So even if you're doing your best, you're trying, and you still blow it, you still fall, you still fail, offer that failure up to God. So we will